Good morning. Good morning. You know, I sent you an email last week saying that Doug will be teaching today, but Doug has a home in Canada, I believe. Has a home somewhere in Canada. And he's been doing Zoom calls with Walla Walla, and everything's been fine, except something happened yesterday. And he was having trouble with his Zoom call, and it got worse. And so he couldn't do it today. So I'm standing up here hoping that you're going to be a real discussion class today. But what happened was we were going today into next week's lesson. I taught this lesson 6 years ago. So it was already in the hopper, ready to go. And Doug will come back next week and teach a lesson we were supposed to have had today. But I think we'll be just fine. And I want to welcome our Zoom folks. Thank you for faithfully showing up every week. And I hope to see you in class sooner rather than later. And I appreciate you being here. Laura, do you have any visitors or announcements or anything?
I don't have an announcement, and I've been yakking with people, but that's not normal.
No.
But I don't see any visitors. No. But then we have some announcements right there that are going to be presented.
Okay.
So I just wanted to invite you ladies, you'll notice in the bulletin and also there's some posters around the church. Duane Ministry are inviting you to a pool party on August the 14th. It is going to be at one of our members' house, Laura Vandenberg's. The address is in the bulletin. It's also on the posters that are around the church. We hope you will come and enjoy yourself. It's a time of fellowship, but also we're calling it being in the sun. So soaking up the sun. So we hope that you will come and join with us. A couple of years ago, we did a pool party, and it ended up just being the ladies who were involved in planning women's ministry, but it was really meant to be a social time for all ladies in the church. So please come. Then the other two things that are going on, you heard Pastor Greg mention that Gary Chapman is going to be here. There are a bunch of these little cards out of the welcome desk. Please invite your friends to come to that. And also, the church is putting on a Neil Nedley Depression and Anxiety seminar. And the first information meeting about that is August the 4th. The second one is August the 15th. So plan to come to either one of those if you're experiencing depression or anxiety. Anxiety is one thing that is on the rise right now, not just because of the situation in the world, but it is one of the leftover symptoms of COVID. I had COVID in 2020, and I have never experienced anxiety problems or issues in my life before having COVID. And now I find that I can get anxious, and it's not really triggered by anything. And so if you're battling that kind of thing on COVID, this is a really good thing. It really has a lot of information about depression and anxiety, ways to battle it, whether it's just situational, that has caused it, or you're recuperating from COVID, or whether you are actually been diagnosed and have some clinical issues with that. It's a lot of things, and it's from Dr. Neil. So if you have any questions about that, the announcements for all of these are in the bulletin.
Thank you. I've been told that our Sabbath school class will be ready in a couple of weeks, but I've been told that for quarters, 6 months, but that's fine. We're doing just fine here. I have heard that when we do move, and again, I've not been very active in this, that Zoom will not work for a couple of weeks. Why? But Abner's handling that. So maybe we won't move until we have everything in order, unless the church is wanting to really clear this out. So it's, by the way, this area is really used a lot. I was talking about having a potluck maybe here. It's booked all the way through August. So what we're trying to do is have a potluck, hopefully at my house in a couple of 2 or 3 weeks. we're trying to get a schedule that's so that it works. I've talked to a few people who are not going to be here. I'd like for as many people to be here when we do have it as possible. We are going to have someone else come up and tell them about themselves in just a few minutes. Tanya's going to do that. That's going to be part of a weekly thing. We're going to hear from people we don't know that much about, and we're going to find out who you are, a little bit about you. We did this religiously, I guess I can say that in this room, for a long time, and we stopped, and we're starting that up again. And with that said, we'll have a word of prayer, and then we will start. John, would you have our prayer?
Father in heaven, we are blessed that you set aside a special time for us, that we are able to gather in freedom to learn more about you, to share, to discuss, to be washed by the Holy Spirit. And we pray that each one of us will receive a blessing from being here in Jesus' name.
Thank you. Just a tidbit of information, which has nothing to do with what we're studying about today, but July the 23rd, 1904, the ice cream cone was introduced today.
Let's celebrate.
You can chat about that over your veggie burger later on this week, but ice cream cones made of waffle wafer. Let's say it was the first pictorial evidence for ice cream cones dated back to 1807, a Parisian cafe. Later in 1903, New York ice cream seller Italo Macchione filed a patent for a machine that enabled them to make ice cream cones. By the way, ice cream cones were made here, started by a family called Turnbull, around the turn of the century. You've ever heard of Wayne Turnbull? That was their claim to fame. The Campbell family got involved in that way back when. And they eventually moved into moon pies. That's right. The Campbell family is renowned for that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is they were families of black great wealth. And we're going to talk today about what happens to people sometimes who become wealthy and how their lives are either impacted or blessed. Also yesterday, July 22nd, 1893, a poet named Catherine Lee Bates took a ride that left her quite impressed. She was from England, and she took a ride to Pikes Peak in Colorado, and then she took a train to Niagara Falls, and when she got to Kansas, Colorado Springs, and finally to Pikes Peak, she was overwhelmed with the beauty of it, and a few lines of poetry came into her head. And it started out as America the Beautiful. Wow. And she saw the spacious skies and the amber waves of rain, got into her head, headed back to Colorado. 2 years later, she put it all together. And then put music behind it. It is now considered our second national anthem. So, hey, you didn't know that. So here we are today. What happened? We experienced important things 100 or 120 minutes ago. Let's do a review. Last week, Jesus was invited to a Pharisee's house for a meal. The Pharisee was astonished that Jesus did not go through the Jewish washing rituals. Didn't wash his hands before the meal. We talked about how the washing ritual was to take place and how it was done. Remember, you poured some water over your fingers up, and then you took your fist and you did this and you did that, and then you did both hands, and then they poured it on your fist down, and you did the same thing. This was done before every course. And if you had a 4 or 5 course meal, there was a lot of time spent washing. At this event, the gloves came off with Jesus. He went right after the Pharisees. Remember, the Pharisees were sort of a denomination to themselves. Could be a farmer or a businessman, but they followed all the rules and traditions 100%. You know, there were 39 major rules about keeping the Sabbath, and then there were under layers of like another 200 or 300 rules about where you could walk You could do this, you had to leave water on a long walk, so you would stop and you could get your water there along the path, the trail. I mean, it was getting totally ridiculous. And Jesus saw this. But then they followed the law to the extent 100%. We discussed the fact that the experts in the law were the interpreters of the law. So if the Pharisees had a question, they would go to the experts in the law, which were always around, and they would answer the question. And Jesus also predicted their future, because they had killed. Now, this is the people he's talking to in the room who had just invited him for lunch or supper. We don't know. But he tells them, because you and your families have killed, your ancestors have killed and persecuted the prophets and the people sent to you by God, God is going to hold you responsible. This generation, you sitting in this room, will be responsible for all the misdeeds and the murders and all the tragedies, from Abel to the blood of Zechariah, who was killed between the altar. From the beginning of time till now, you are going to be held responsible. You will be responsible for all the murders and the persecutions of God's messengers since the beginning of time, because they have already killed John the Baptist, and they will eventually kill Jesus. The Roman-Judea War from 66 to 70 AD will scatter the chosen people, and they will wander the earth for centuries. I would say the party didn't go very well. Do you ever evaluate someone based on what they own, or what they have, or what they wear? Do you judge them sometimes by that? Of course you do. We all do. Now, let's be honest. If you see a truck driving up right now and the muffler's off, and you can hear the truck from the other end of the parking lot, you're probably going to say this guy might have a financial. Okay? Someone drives up in a brand new Maserati, probably going to judge that. Not necessarily negatively, but you judge it. You make a determination in your mind as to how you look at that person. If I come in here in a swimsuit and flip-flops next week, you're probably going to judge me. I would be shocked if you didn't. You would be medicated or something would be wrong with you. And if you want to come in here in flip-flops and a sweatshirt, you're welcome. You're welcome. Just make sure you've got all of them. It was an old, I started my career selling carpet out of the back of my car, my trunk. And I started calling home builders. And I wanted to be successful, I wanted to make money. And I was struggling. And I was calling these home builders, and they had new trucks and they had new cars. And there was one old home builder that I didn't call him. He had an old station wagon that was a rag. You know, the tailgate, when you used to have station wagons, really didn't close. I would see him slamming it and everything. I didn't call on him for like 6 months. So finally, someone in that subdivision that I did sell carpet to, I asked him about that old guy and the old beat up car. He said, yeah. What about him? I said, I haven't called him. I don't know if he can pay me or not. He said, but let me tell you something. That guy in that old car can buy and sell every home builder in this subdivision. He doesn't borrow money for his homes. He pays cash. He keeps 4 or 5 homes going all the time. We all judge. It's human nature. Okay, before we get started, I want Tanya Atkinson to come up, and give us a little brief, little something about who she is, where she's been in the next 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. So Tanya, would you come up? I know you're nervous. It's okay. We're only going to record this and send it out to 100 million people.
Well, my name's Miranda Atkins.
Oh, that helps.
So I was saying out loud in the car on the way here, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Okay, so I'm just going to tell a little bit about me. Raised in Michigan, and I have one sibling, my brother. He went to church here for a couple of decades. You might know him. It's Dr. Tom Mullen and his wife, Bethany. And I have 2 children. Some of you know my sons, Chris and Andy Atkins. They went to Southern. I met my husband in Michigan. He was from Sault Ste. Marie, and I was from Grand Rapids area. We went to academy and to college together. He enlisted to go to Vietnam as a medic. I think he's a conscientious objector, so he is. We got married when we were 19. He left 2 weeks later. He came back. He was all messed up psychologically, ended up he had PTSD. They didn't even know what it was, of course, when he got back. That was a big challenge to our family. My sons are therapists. One just got back from Iraq as a therapist. So it comes full circle when my husband did not have emotional support in Vietnam, but my son is now doing that for other soldiers. He's a relationship strategist for the federal government out of his home. My other son is a school counselor in Colorado. So my husband and I, we went through the years. He kind of blamed God for this Vietnam and all the suffering he saw. And so I just went to church with the kids and raised them. And when I became 47 years old, I decided I wanted to go to college with my kids, much to their horror. They go, what are you like? I said, I'm really cool. They go, oh, what's that? Anyway, I wasn't in any of their classes. I graduated with a master's in social work degree when I was 52. Took out every student loan I could. Some of the loans were for my kids here at Southern. So I had a mega student loan, but that's okay. I went forward. I felt God was leading me. So I was a hospice social worker from age 52 to 71 when I paid off my student loans. And during those 17 years at night, I was a play therapist for kids. I had a big toy room in Michigan and a big toy room here in Chattanooga. I was a play therapist, helped children with trauma. So I did hospice social work all day. It could be 101-year-old dying down to little 3-year-old kids. So I was blessed with that. My husband had a lot of health problems, psychologically, of course, let alone physically. And he had brain surgery, back surgery, a couple of times, shoulder, hip, and he had acid in his brain. And anyway, he had lung cancer. But I continued with the 2 jobs. He was a positive person. And he came out of the post-traumatic stress. He had 8 years of therapy. He gave his life to Jesus Christ before he died when he was 72. So God is good. He always brings good out of challenges in my life. I am the facilitator for the widows grief group here, Open Windows, Widows Ministry. It's a really hard words to say. So I'm happy to do that. And then because I feel now I lead such a spoiled life being retired, I have volunteered to help people that have health problems, clean out their garages and sheds and organize things and take things to donate. So if you have health problems, need help, or no one that does, and I have met 3 of my best friends doing that. So again, God blesses you when you get out there and want to do something for others. And I love to organize. So that is something I love to do. Thank you.
Help us get to know people if I don't do the correct name. Sort of on that. Hurry on that. And today, but that's very interesting, and we'll have more. I really appreciate you coming forward. I know it's kind of a spur of the moment. I'm a spur of the moment person. I don't plan vacations, never have. I don't know. I just decide I've had enough. I'm going on vacation. Fortunately, I've got a great wife that just packs a bag and we get to the airport or we jump in our car. It's never been planned. And I appreciate you guys that know where you're going to be 3 months from today, and I marvel at these religious leaders and people who work for the church, and And I've invited them over. I go, no, I'll be at the North American Convention. And I'll be, oh, what about? No, I'll be at the NAD. I'll be at the, great. I couldn't do it. So, we appreciate the people with our schedule. They make the trains run on time. In today's story, we read about a rich man who had much. His crops, let me make sure I have not gotten ahead of myself here. His crops were now so big that he wants to tear down his barn and build bigger ones so he can take life easy. He says to himself, I will have plenty, so I'll have plenty for years. I'll take life easy, I'll eat, drink, and be merry. Let's call this man George Megabucks. Okay, George Megabucks. If he or she lived in your area, so I got these questions out of the Bible, so I didn't make these up. If he or she lived in your area, what neighborhood would he live in? You know? What subdivision would he live in? What car would he drive, or would she drive, or would they drive? Where would they go to church? And how regular would they attend church? How would you describe Mr. and Mrs. Megabucks? Clever? Secure? Immature? Unhappy? Selfish? Content? Materialistic? Brilliant? Or just lucky? Some of the great wealth in this city and in this area was created by people who lived on Lookout Mountain, Tennessee. The Coca-Cola families lived on Lookout. The insurance McClellans lived on Lookout. The hamburger people, Crystal Hamburger, lived on Lookout. Turn my devices down. I'm going to tell you a story about a man who married into a very wealthy family. Many of those families on Lookout, life did not turn out well for the second, third, and fourth generation. Alcoholism, drugs. Not many picked up the baton and led on to grow that wealth. And all those families, there were some wonderful people. There were also some tragedies. I'm going to tell you today, later at the end of this class, about a man who married into wealth. How he handled it. After dying, how would the local paper describe George Megabuck? Tireless worker? Foolish? A success story? Enterprising? Or just lucky? I was waiting on my wife for dinner 15 years ago or so. I'm at J. Alexander's. I'm standing in the bar area waiting on her, and this guy comes up to me. I kind of knew who it was. He said, are you a DeFoor? And I said, yeah, I am. I know your brother. Really? I know who this guy was. Probably makes anywhere from $20, $25 million a year. I know it. And he said, well, you know so-and-so in Cleveland, don't you? I said, yeah, I know it. There's another very wealthy man, Adventist man. So he called me yesterday, wanted to borrow my jet. I'm like, okay. So I told him I would lease him my old jet, but he can't use my new jet yet. I go, I just got my new jet. Really? Well, that's great, man. Good luck with that. Yeah, I just want to say hello to you. Good to see you too, man. Nice chatting with you. We have so much in common. Today's story takes place in Luke 12, 13 through 34. And in your harmony, it's section 105, page 124. So go to page 124. And we're going to read, starting there on 105, where it says parables about worldliness and spiritual authority. Got it. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them in this parable, "The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crop.' Then he said, 'This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store up grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you prepared for yourself?' This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich toward God." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you'll eat, or about your body, what you'll wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storehouse or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They don't labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you? Oh, you of little faith. And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagans run after all such things, and your Father knows what you need. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. And notice that last part, but seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you. Let's look at verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." The Jews at that time were obsessed with land. In the first century, as it is in the 21st century, land was a vital Jewish symbol. Remember the story about the prodigal son, and he asked his dad to sell the property and divide it. This was the biggest insult he could have ever said to his dad. Telling your dad, "I wish you were dead so I could have the money now." Land was everything to a Jew. Everything. Families clung to their inheritance for religious reasons as well as economic. Jesus is saying God wants all that to change. The man has not listened to the deep spiritual teachings of Jesus. Verse 13. He says, "Teacher, tell my brother." But Jesus says, "Why are you coming to me today?" In those days, it was common for people to go to take their disputes to a respected rabbi for judgment. Have you ever gone to your pastor and asked him to judge something for you? It happened to me once. I was accused of cheating someone on the real estate there. So they went to not just their pastor, they went up the ladder, way up the ladder. It was very embarrassing, especially because that person way up the ladder had taken money from a relative of mine and invested and lost it. That Adventist is now chastising me about the real estate. That was hard for me. Very hard. But it's very common, and you should talk to your pastor about problems if he can see you. In those days, they went to the rabbi for judgment. There is no plea for Jesus to investigate the matter. He doesn't give him a lot of background. He says he just wants an instant answer. Jesus is refusing to be mixed up in this dispute about money. To call one, and Jesus says, look, man, to call someone man at the time implies sternness or being quite severe. Let's read verse 15. Jesus replied, man who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you. And here's 15. Then he said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kind of greed. Man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. What in your mind does covetousness or greed mean to you? And where's Gordon? He's always popping up. He's not here today. It's okay. What does covetousness or greed mean to you in your experience? And I'm asking, how do you interpret that? Yes, Rob.
I want to be better than you. Oh, you've got a car that's better than mine. I'm going to go get one that's better than yours.
Can't have my jet. The young jet, old jet. You can have the old jet. You can't have the new jet.
Jealousy, I think, motivates it a lot. You got something I don't, hand it over.
The actual definition is an undue affection for the material things of life, especially those belonging to someone else.
Sounds like socialism.
Sorry,
Sounds like socialism.
where are you? I can't hear you.
Socialism.
Sounds like socialism.
Oh,
Communism. Nobody can have something that no one else has,
yeah.
even if they work for it. It's mine. I want it.
Let's look at verse 20. I'm going too fast. I'm running out of stuff, so you got to speak up. Remember, I'm not supposed to be here today.
Yeah.
Let's look at verse 20. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. John, can you get to Daniel for me in just a second?
Yeah.
Oh, the second is here. Can you, what other story do we hear about? That we hear about
I got
in the Bible that says this very night your life will be demanded from you. Remember that? Belshazzar. Read that.
All right, this is Daniel 5, starting with verse 22 through 30. But you, his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled yourself, though you knew all this. Instead, you have set yourself up against the Lord of heaven. You had the goblets from the temple brought to you and your nobles, your wives and your concubines drank wine from them. You praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, who could not see or hear or understand. But you do not honor the God who holds in his hands your life and all your ways. Therefore, be sent the hand that wrote the inscription. This is the inscription that was written. Many, many tele parskim. This is what the words mean. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. You have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then in Belshazzar's command, Daniel was clothed in purple, a gold chain was placed around his neck, and he was proclaimed the third highest ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, king of the Babylonians, explain an area the King Kingdom at the age of 62.
So, Bill shows us in the feast. He brought in those gold and silver goblets that were taken by his father Nebuchadnezzar. And they decided to have a big party and even have his concubines. The hand appears, Daniel's brought in. He said, you had everything, but it wasn't enough. Everything. You had a world, it was not enough. Worry. I'm not going to be brave enough to ask you if you're worried. Worry. Did we ever stop worrying? I have not. I have not. Grandchildren are in Florida. Got a picture of them swimming in the beach. Sent me a photo. All three of them in the beach at the ocean here. Also, I'm worried. The waves are this high. And they're this high. So I start worrying. So I start texting back, hey, make sure that the times are not doing the time. You know, we have sharks down there, they see them. You know, I'm way up here, 10 hours away. I'm worried. They can't even take a vacation without me worried. It's hard. When I taught this lesson 6 years ago, I had a lot of photos. Here's a photo of a lady doing this in her 30s. Looks like she's hit the wall at work. What do you worry about the most? Think about it. Because Jesus is telling us about worry here. What do you worry about the most? Marlene, what do you worry about the most? You want to talk to me?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I worry, of course, about health, about family. I think those are the major worries I have. And then I thank God that I have a job and that we can keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Who in here has stopped worrying about money? And hands aren't flying up today. There's one right there, Jerry. Way to go. He stopped worrying. I don't blame him. Stop worrying about it too.
Well, I don't worry because I have a fantastic daughter, Pam Lewis. And since I moved to this area 13 years ago, it was her goal to remove anything I could worry about.
Yeah, how'd it work out?
For me, it's worked good.
Now she's worried, right?
So my temptation is worry about things that haven't happened yet. And then the two things come to my mind is worry is like a rocking chair. It gives me something to do, but it doesn't get me anywhere. And also, if I worry, I'm calling out a liar. She said,
John.
In Isaiah, God.
Get closer to that. John, you're going to say something right outside.
So in Isaiah, God said, he who keeps his mind steadfast on you, on God,
Yes.
his mind is kept in perfect peace. And I found that whenever I start to worry, if I concentrate on God, not the problem, if I concentrate on who God is and how vast and how great and how wonderful He is, my problem of what I'm worried about gets smaller, and I end up giving it to Him because He can handle however large my mind has created the worry to be. He's always bigger than it.
Oh, good.
So I found that text to be very true.
It is.
Your turn.
All right, I'll have to come back over. Sorry. It's a killer, isn't it? Yeah, John. Come on.
Well, you have to claim the promises. For me, one of them is God has promised that he will never give me something that he won't give me strength to deal with. And that takes a lot of the worry out of that. But the bottom line is you do have to rely on God for that, not on yourself. Because if I go back and I say, yeah, but how can I handle this? Then I'm in trouble because I can't.
Could somebody read 1 Corinthians 10:13? Somebody look that up and read that. I'm not a big, I don't know 1,000 texts in the Bible. There's a couple I have close to me. And this is one. Has somebody got that? 1 Corinthians 10. Go read that. And read it loud.
No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape that you may be able to bear it.
Oh, temptation has befallen you, but you can't overcome. Do you ever worry about the text that says, I'm paraphrasing here, you're responsible for your children. You'll be called to be responsible for your children when you die. You ever think about that? That's a tough one. Our kids don't want to go to church for various reasons. They don't want to come to this church for various reasons, or that church for various reasons. So, you think about those things. Just how deep do we drill down on that? We're doing the best we can, Yes, sir.
This is really hard. I think a lot of us here know what we should do, but it's not that easy to do it. If your kids are close to the ocean tomorrow, this class isn't going to change you worrying about it. I know you too well. Same with me. And we live in a capitalistic society. We have trained you. We've developed you to worry about things like this, worry about retirement, worry about stuff that, yes, I can say, well, I should hand that over. Yeah, I should. In the meantime, I don't have time to fool with that because I'm too busy worrying about it. So, this is really, really, really hard, I think. This is one of those subjects. It's really simple. Know what you should do, but go ahead and do it. Tough deal. And so the message is, at least we go and we sit in this chair, presented wonderfully by Ken, and at least maybe I can move the needle a little closer towards that. That's what I can hope for this morning. I'm not going to be able to hope for any more because I'm going to continue to worry about my children. Marlene's going to continue to worry about her daughter. Boy, don't we wish we didn't worry.
Did you ever see the movie with Burt Reynolds? And he was worried to death about, he was some kind of rich Hollywood guy in the script. I don't know. All I remember is that he decided he couldn't take the worry and the pressure any longer. And he lived in Malibu or somewhere, and the ocean was out there, and he said, I'm going to swim out in the ocean, wander around myself. He gets out far enough that he can't get back to shore. And he thinks about his little boy who's like 6 or 8 years old. And it dawns on him, I don't want to do this. I've been worried about the wrong thing. So he says, God, if you will get me back to the shore, I will give you 90% of everything I make and everything I own. And he starts swimming as hard as he can back to the shore. And suddenly he can kind of see his house better from there. And he says, God, I mean it. I'm going to give you 80% of everything. It's closer. I'm serious, 70%. And finally he hits the shore and crawls up on the sand. He says, God, I mean it. 5%. You can count on me. That's kind of the way it works. It's kind of the way it works. Well, if I could get this much money in my retirement, I'm not gonna worry about it. Then I said, well, if I could get this much, I won't worry anymore, because if something happens to me, Judy, I think, well, no, that's not enough. I have 4 kids, what's something happen? Well, now I've got 5 grandsons, so that's not enough. So where does this end? You're pitching dirt over me when I'm 65. It ends then, I guess. We stop worrying. Or Jerry, I have a daughter that takes care of me when I get a little older. I'll stop worrying. Yeah.
I find that when I'm worrying, I don't believe what I say I believe, which is, I really believe that God will never leave me or forsake me. I accept that. But in that moment when I'm worrying, if I don't stop and check that, when I do stop and check that, it's because I stop believing that. Yeah. For that moment, for that event, for that bundle of worry, because he says, I provided for the sparrows. Yeah. What do you think I'm going to do for you? Yeah. And I'm saying, I'm worrying about this Lord because I don't really believe. And that's the struggle for me, is that I have to keep telling myself, if I am in Christ, if my relationship with him is strong, he has said, I will never leave you. Wow. And the kingdom of this world and all the stuff fades away, but my kingdom is forever. Believe in me, trust me, I will never leave you.
Well, both my sons turned their life around to Jesus Christ in their early 20s. And I was washing windows, cleaning houses. My kids were still in college. And my son was going to help me wash windows. And the next morning I was going to pick him up. And he didn't come to the door. And I was getting all mad. He said, Mom, I'm having my worship. Do you want to join me? I went, oh, yeah. So that was beautiful. So I joined him. And in his prayer, I'll never forget, he said, Lord, help me to have the will to be willing. So even our will to be willing to give over God.
Wow, kid says that. Have a mouth of babes. You know,
one more comment, Ken. Good to see you. Just to kind of tag off everything that's said here about easier said than done. Those of you that don't know, I am kind of a songwriter on the side. And so I wrote a song recently, and it just goes right along with this in the chorus. It says, I look around this world I call my home, discouragement and trouble everywhere. I wonder why you never stop the tragedy that ever shakes the ground. And it finishes with, oh Lord, I trust in you. You know, it's easy to say that. We trust in him. But when we're in the sea and the waves are beating down on us, do we really trust in him? And that's the hard part. Really putting our trust in him and trusting that he is going to see it through. He's going to see my son through his prison sentence and get out. So, you know, he's going to see my daughter through. Wow. Yeah. We have to trust in him. We have to have that faith. I mean, our prayers. But it's just so hard. You know, it's so hard to have that trust and hope.
Isn't that where the rubber meets the road, though?
Right.
I mean, that's what we're saying. That's where the rubber meets the road. Either we believe what we say, or all of this that we do is just fake. And stop faking it. I mean, that's what people who aren't in Christianity are tired of just being hypocrites. Either you do believe what you say and you stand on what you believe, or it's just fake. And why would we join you being fake?
Yeah.
I mean, reality, and I'm preaching to myself more than anybody else.
Thank you, Janet.
I think this is just part of being human. It's what part of being human. What it is. And I think it falls under the whole patience of the saints thing. It's like we battle from birth to death. We do. But the question is, where do we turn every time we fall down? There's a lot of people that don't turn to Jesus when they fall down. And I try to look to there when I fail. I try to look at him when things are horrible I've got a rotten attitude when I'm angry, when I'm worried. I fall down a lot. But that, I think, is the ultimate issue. Is what do we do with it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
There's a,
John.
you know, there'll be a time when it will be black and white. There will be a time when you're gonna fall on one side or the other. That's said here. But I mean, not that far before the cross, the disciples were arguing about who is gonna get the best place in the kingdom. You know, which, you know, I want to be on the right hand and I want to be on the left hand. They hadn't got it yet. I mean, but there's a process that's going on that Christ is sending them and us through. So I would love to sit here and say, this is black and white. Either you're here or you're here, but I don't think it's that simple. It can be that simple, but I don't think that's the way we're built. And so I kind of am glad I've entered a process, like being here, sitting in this chair, so I can move the needle further, knowing that he will never leave. He'll be there. But he's trying to bring me around. And I want to be a part of that effort with him, knowing that I'm not there. And I probably will never get there, but the Father will pull me through the finish line, I think.
But John, did you not worry about your daughter when she was taken captive of some foreign country?
I worried about her this morning. Yes, that's, I guess, my point. I'm worrying about his grandkids now, you know, I mean, it's the way I'm built. I did not sleep last night because of the things that are going on. This is a problem I got. That's why I'm so sensitive about it. I get it. I get
He's a big guy, but he's sensitive. Yeah, right.
Building on what John said, there is a real black and white mentality that comes down where people say, well, if you worried off, then you don't have a relationship with Jesus. And I want to,
I worry about those.
I want to give you permission to give me permission. God takes us and allows us to worry a little bit. He put it in there, I think, you know, the minute my kid was conceived, it was joy and anxiety, and it hasn't stopped now at all. So worry, I think, like he said, it's part of our DNA.
Yeah.
But dependence on God in the end. I still worry that, Lord, I'm going to worry about this, but I'm going to worry about it with you.
Yeah, Tanya, and I'll come back.
You know,
I got Tanya finally like.
there are real tragedies and real dangers. And for us to not worry or at least be, you know, aware, you know, like the ocean can be a scary place. It's fair for you to worry. And bad things happen. A friend of mine, you know, her 9-month-old grandson died this week. He had a heart defect, and of course, his parents and grandparents and family worried about his life, and he died. But she posted the most beautiful song, you know, saying, it was a song saying, I know God, you can control no matter what happens. And for us to, in times of unspeakable grief and tragedy, to turn to God and say, no, we trust you. I trust you. I trust there. We don't understand why bad things happen, you know, but I trust you. You know, turning to God.
Yeah.
Turning to
Somebody's Stacy.
I think the word worry has a negative connotation, and it should, because it shows like a lack of confidence in outcome. It's nervousness that disaster is looming. And I think it's also overused to describe varying grays or, you know, like there's shades of gray of thing. I think sometimes you can be concerned about something, or you can be attentive about something, or you're giving consideration to something, which are just varying degrees of contemplating an issue. And all of those things can be good, like attentive to me, because you should consider your finances, and you should consider your health, and you should consider your safety, but then you get more attentive to it, and then you get concerned about it. Concern is like the precursor to worry. So I think the word worry is overused. And I go back to this verse a lot, that if God cares this much about you from the flowers, then he's going to take care of you, and it helps me be less concerned, less worried.
Yeah.
Or to be attentive to something's not bad.
A couple of months ago, I was asked to write about my favorite book by a newspaper, no, not a newspaper, a publication that's a glossy magazine. It comes out every couple of months in Chattanooga. And I can't remember the name of it. They asked me to, and some other business people to write about their favorite book. And so I thought, well, don't you have, I've had my day in the sun with the newspapers, and I'm not out. I used to hope and pray I would be in the newspaper. That's good every now. I'll do everything. I go everywhere. I need my face, and I'm done with that. I've had my day in the sun. So don't you have any other people? I said, yeah, but okay. So I wrote about Dale Carnegie's How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. The rest of the guys wrote about 5 successful things that people do, and the 7 habits of successful people, and business 101, and I knew they would, but everybody works. In that book, and I talked about it before in this class, Dale Carnegie, who was a Christian man, said, write down what is the problem? What is the problem? If you don't write it down, it won't resonate. Write it down on the wall, write it down on your hand. You got to write it down. What is the problem? Number 2, what are the solutions? And some of them might be a little goofy, but write them down anyway. My mother-in-law lives with me. She's driving me crazy. How do I get rid of her? A train comes through the house. I don't know. But write it down. Write down all of them, and then pick out the best ones and act on it. And once you select the one you want to chase, that's the one you've got to go after. Then you need to be praying about it. Because you were in trouble, or you wouldn't have had to do this process anyway. When you hit the wall, what's the problem? What's the solution? Pick one out, and you got to run with the ball. I find it best if I'm praying about that. Sometimes I get worried, and I have to look in the mirror and look at myself and go, wow. Hey, look, why don't you practice what you preach? You're up here in front of these people every week. Why don't you do what you're telling them to do? We all have to have a wake-up call. We worry about the economy. We worry about having to work on Sabbath, fear of failure, the squad. That kind of scares me a little bit. The squad, AOC, and the new group just taking over the world, I think. This 6 years ago, guess what the big word was? This is here from me. ISIS. Now, who has heard about ISIS in the last 4 or 5 years? Nobody. We've moved on to something else to worry about. Hope, the end of times, personal finances and retirement. We choose up for you, your children, yeah. Therefore, your religion could be wrong. Could that be? Losing your health? Is there life after death? Well, it's in my age group, it does cross your mind. Roland, you ever think about life after death? Yeah. Verse 24 says, don't worry, consider the ravens. The ravens were considered a nasty, dirty bird at that time. Nobody touched a raven. A Jew would not touch a raven. So Elijah was fed by ravens. What's that all about? God cares about those birds. How much more does he care about you? 50% of all the things, and these are the statistics, 50% of the things that you worry about right now will never come to pass. My kids probably will not drown in the ocean this morning. Okay? They probably won't. 30% of all your worries involve past decisions that you made, but you can't change them. So quit worrying about it. It's done. It's over. 12% of your worries focus on criticism that you might get from others, or you're getting it from others. And we're all criticized. 8% of the things that you worry about could be, notice, could be legitimate. And this is the one that I put in myself. I learned this years ago. Less than 1 of 10 things we're worried about is really a major concern. And right now, this is what I always try to go back to when I'm beat down. The thing that you're so worried about, and it's a problem for you right now, and you're having to work through it right now, and you're praying to God as you get through it. A year from now, you won't remember what it was. It has happened over and over and over. The thing that got you knocked down in the dirt today, you won't really remember that much about it 12 months from now. You won't. 7 reasons not to worry. Jesus gives us in Matthew 6:25 through 34. We're not going to read it. It's just a recap of what we're studying today. Matthew 6:25 through 34. He talks about the same thing in a different story. Matthew tells the story. The same God who created your life can be trusted with it. He tells of your life. If you're worried about the future, ruins today. Yeah, I know if you're preaching this, no worry about something right now, but I'm sharing with you. But I'll tell you this, it's more harmful than helpful. Worry. Worrying shows a lack of faith sometimes. I'm guilty. Worry keeps you focused away from God. And living one day at a time keeps you from being consumed with worry. One day at a time. What do you consider the most valuable in your life? Think about, choose 3 out of this. I'm not going to put on board. What do you consider the most valuable things in your life? My family? My friends? My integrity? My time? My memories? Are they the most valuable? My good health? I'm grateful. I do worry about it, but I am grateful every day for my health. My assets? My work. My faith. Choose 3. Which are the most valuable? I want to read you something about treasures in heaven. Who do you know on this earth that has laid up treasures in heaven? Think about it. You've met them. Some of them have passed on. Some of them are doing it right now. I want to read you about a guy named Lee Anderson. You've never heard of him. Is there anybody in here who's even heard of Lee Anderson? Chattanooga, Tennessee. No. The McDonald family became a titan, well, years ago in Chattanooga. Mr. McDonald started Blue Cross Blue Shield. You know, Food City that you go to today, they used to be Red Food. Before that, it was Red Stores. He would put out a little flyer of what his specials were. Red Stores, that meant potatoes with 10 cents a pound, ground beef. And he would have kids stuffing them in the mailbox. And somebody said, well, could I put something about my business on your flyer? We'll advertise. Well, that led to the Chattanooga Times Free Press. He created his own newspaper. It was a powerhouse. He went from a grocery store to owning one of the biggest, newspapers in the South. Helped start Blue Cross Blue Shield in Tennessee. Very, very wealthy. Lee Anderson married his daughter years and years ago. Began a 70-year career at the Chattanooga Times Free Press when he was hired as a reporter at age 16 when World War II has decimated the newspaper staff. He steps in and runs the staff at 16 years old. Over the years, he wrote picture stories and worked every news assignment from police to business to courts before from the Tennessee legislature and politics. He was named editor of the 3 times in April of 1958. After writing many of the editorials and the associate editors since 1948, Mr. Anderson was named president and publisher of the Chattanooga Times Free Press in June of 1990. Well, that's great because his dad owned the business. You'd think he was made president. His father-in-law. So that's kind of what I thought all those years. But through my ignorance, I had the wrong impression. Following the sale of the afternoon Chattanooga Free Press in 1998 and its merger with the morning Chattanooga Times in 1999, he continued as an editor of the Free Press. He traveled the world, off to the globe, hotspots, returning with news accounts for his readers. He was a civilian guest on the Navy tour. Get this. He was a civilian guest on the Navy tour ship when the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred in 1962, which I remember. The ship became part of the U.S. Navy's blockade of the communists in Cuba. He was rescued and brought back off that ship to the United States. He was the first guy to really report about the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this goes on and on and on. He was the governor's outstanding Tennessee award for governor. He got the governor's outstanding Tennessee award from Governor Edward. He got the local taxpayer associate. I mean, this thing is every award you could have in the world. He was an icon. And let me tell you what. Let me get it. This guy could have had anything in Chattanooga. He was connected. His family got money. And I've got some pictures here we used 6 years ago when they stopped the presses, when Kennedy was shot. They're standing there worried about what they'll print. They don't have enough information. It's a tremendous moving shot. I'm looking at it right now. Eponymous. I didn't know what eponymous meant. Lee Anderson's Sunday school. This is the treasure he laid out. His Sunday school class had 450 regular members each week. 450 regular members. He helped start Bibles in the schools. Does anybody here know what Bibles in the schools is? Please find out what that is. I don't want to shame you, but look up Bibles in the schools. It's a big deal. We have so many schools in Hamilton County teaching Bible right now. It's against the law in other states. He pushed it through and got a judge to make an order that it was legal. Bibles in the schools. Google it. Senator Lamar Alexander said at his funeral, the most principled man he has ever known. Senator Bob Corker said, a Chattanooga icon. Bill Haslam reported his worth when he took office of governor of Tennessee at $250 million. You know what Bill Haslam said? A Chattanooga icon. I'm fortunate to have known him. Kind and polite, the kind of man I wanted to grow up to be. Our former mayor, Pat Rhodes, said he's a solid Christian gentleman and gave guidance to so many. There are people who are laying up treasures like that for them. Our question this morning is, are we doing it as well? Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses. All these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things that were promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on earth. People who say such things show they are looking for a country of their own. If they had been thinking of this country, the one they'd left, they would have had an opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called our God, for He's prepared an entire city. But where your heart is, That's what the big question is. I want to thank Doris for manning the camera. Really appreciate it. With that, what don't we have a prayer? John.
I want to thank you for bringing us all together. Help us understand the importance of turning it over to you. Help us feel the relief that is and the faith needed to do that. Father, bless this day. Help us leave this room with even a greater appreciation for the inspired work that you want us to do. I ask in your name. We ask. Amen.
Thank you for coming. Sorry we ran over this morning.